Well, good day, everybody. Welcome to Chapter 13. It's all about persuasion. That's what your last speech was about. But why do we persuade? Well, a lot of people say, you can't persuade me to do something I don't want to do. And that's 99% of the time correct. I mean, if you really don't want to do it, I probably can't persuade you to. But the art of persuasion is convincing you that it's okay. Because we're trying to alter or modify attitudes and beliefs. Now, beliefs are deep, deep held. And attitudes are a little more shallow. And a lot of times you can alter somebody's attitude. A lot of times you can alter their belief. Think of all the people that were non-believers that went to church. And when they went to church, all of a sudden they became a believer. Somebody persuaded them, somehow they were persuaded to become a believer. Now, when you persuade, you do it every day. Sometimes you persuade yourself. Do I want pizza for lunch or do I want salad for lunch? Well, now that's kind of a moot point because most places to go to have lunch are closed. But you convince yourself one way or the other. And persuasion is used all the time on TV. That sad music with his little puppy dog eyes, and this poor dog, he's been out in the cold and freezing, and send us 19 cents a day or whatever it is, and we'll take care of it, but you got to act right away. That's persuasion. They're pulling at your heartstrings, trying to get you to send them money. But something you always have to look into anytime somebody wants your money is how much of your money is going to take care of that problem. And going back to those dogs, for example, how do you think they find those dogs? Do you think they drive around the country all day long and trespass on people's property until they find a dog chained to a pole with a piece of plywood as a shelter? No. They take the dog out there, they put him in there, and they take the picture. They do it strictly to persuade you to pull on your heartstrings. So there's ethical persuasion. And ethical persuasion basically is, don't be lying to somebody to do something. Don't be convincing somebody so you have personal gain. There's all kinds of people that take advantage of other people and persuade them to do something that doesn't necessarily need to be done, but they're taking advantage of them. One of the most common that out where I live, because I live out in the country, we have septic tanks, is people come around and say, well, your septic tank is full, we have to pump it because, it won't work when it's full. Wrong, it works being full. The stuff sits in there and settles to the bottom, and then the fluid goes out and drains into the ground. But they convince somebody that it's full, so it has to be done. So it's unethical to persuade people like that, but people do it all the time. Now, we can persuade people by questions of policy. Laws are policy. We have a lot of policies now that we didn't have 2 weeks ago. Restricted travel, closed beaches, closed restaurants. Well, they are closed because we want to slow this epidemic. So we're persuading people to stay away from those places strictly so we can slow this epidemic. We can persuade people by questions of value. What is your favorite movie? I love asking this in class because I get all kinds of responses because most of you have a favorite movie. Here I don't have that. But one of my favorite movies is one called Ghost. And it is a romantic movie, what some people might call a chick flick. But it is a wonderful movie about love. And another one is The Green Mile. The Green Mile is not a romantic movie, but it's about love and hate. And both of them are wonderful movies. Now, I could convince you or persuade you to watch them by talking about those movies because I think they're so good. We can also talk about what's good and bad and moral, immoral for questions of value. What's the value of staying at home? Well, a lot of people would say, well, I'm not getting nothing out of it. I'm bored sitting here, da 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 da. But my mom is 89 years old, and she fusses every day because she's locked in a adult living facility, a retirement home basically, and she can't get out. But she fusses every day, and I tell her, yeah, Mom, but if you go out, you might get sick or you might get somebody else sick. Oh, well, okay, I'll stay here. But it's something I have to remind her of often. We can also persuade people by questions of fact. Stating different facts and persuading them to believe something that they didn't believe in before. My favorite example of this is the first president we had was a guy named John Hanson. Most of you probably believe it was a guy named George Washington. But let me tell you, you're wrong. Now, George Washington was elected the first president after the Civil War. But when we declared our freedom from England, and George was the general in charge, he had a different president he answered to, a guy named John Hanson, who was the first president in 1781. So it's a little different. You know, I can persuade you that George Washington wasn't the first president simply by stating the facts and backing them up. Problem we have a lot of times, especially in this alternate universe of the World Wide Web and the internet and everything else, is we have alternative facts, they call them. I call them lies, but you know, either facts are either true or they aren't, and it's up to you as a consumer to research them. So I might tell you it's the fact that John Hanson was the first president. You don't have to believe me. Look it up. When you find out that I was right, it might persuade you that, hey, he knows what he's talking about. Of course, you could find out that it was Snuffy Smith and I was wrong if you research the facts. We can argue by example. Arguing by example is inductive reasoning. You know, voters change elections. I can argue that point. If we have a large turnout of young people or a large turnout of Democrats or a large turnout of Republicans, they're going to change the election. And I can cite examples of different elections where we had large turnouts of one party or the other that overwhelmingly changed the election. We can argue by analogy. This is like that. Most of my stuff in this presentation, I'm used to students being in front of me. And so I ask most students, you know, how many of you know what rugby is? And a couple of you might raise your hand and a little bit. And a lot of you have heard of it but don't know what it is. Well, it's kind of like American football. Now notice I said American football, not football, because soccer is called football in all the other parts of the world except the United States. It's kind of like American football. The ball's shaped the same. Excuse me. It's white instead of brown. And you don't use pads. And a lot of people, let's just say the times I played it, we generally self-medicated during the game with some good beer. But it's kind of like football. You can't get away with that nowadays. We could argue by definition or deductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning, all men are mortal. Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal. Sometimes there's a false analogy that slips into that. And, you know, like God is love, love is blind, Vern is blind, therefore Vern is. No, I'm not. Never said I was. But you deduce things, excuse me, through the reasoning. We can argue by relationships. We are all experiencing something that they remind us of frequently on the news called global warming. Global warming. Got to learn to speak if you want to be a communications person, right? And there's a lot of argument as causation and correlation. What's causing it? Some scientists say it's this, other scientists say it's that. Some people say it's a natural phenomenon. But you can do the research and find out as this has happened, as carbon has gone up in the atmosphere, then the carbon footprint has gone up, the temperature's gone up, the greenhouse gas effect. Now, you can use different strategies to persuade somebody. And I would recommend, or I'd suggest that you already have several in your toolkit. You use different strategies when you want to persuade mom and dad to give you $5 than you want if you were talking to a friend to give you $5. But if you think about it, the idea for persuade is not necessarily making somebody go from A to Z right now. You want to plant a seed, because you will seldom be able to take somebody from not only no, hell no to yes in one session. But plant a seed. This is where I want to go, and you move them a little bit along that line. Give them a little bit of information, a little bit more exposed to it. Provide enough evidence that they can see that there's some point there. That's one reason I'd like you to have an open mind when your peers and you are doing presentations. You don't cut somebody off just because you are a Republican and they're a Democrat, or you're a Democrat and they're a Republican. Have an open mind when you listen to somebody. And if your audience has an open mind and you provide enough evidence, you can plant a little seed to get them going along. Ask them to suspend judgment. Don't make up your mind before I start. You can demonstrate the cost benefit. Let's say that we're talking about a no-kill animal shelter and a tax. Well, most people are going, no, don't tax me, I don't have no animals. No, I don't want to tax you, but I want to put a tax on the people that do have animals. And if we tax them and we can clean up the streets and we don't have as many feral animals running around, it'd be healthier for you. Seek micro changes. You don't want to, you might want to persuade somebody to go from A to Z, but likelihood you're not going to do that. You have to work up to that. So a little change here, a little change here, a little change here. One of the best examples I know of this that's happened recently, and most of you can remember it, is the topic of marriage. More specifically, what they like to call gay marriage. I just call it marriage. But at one time, it was like illegal, and everybody said no. And a few people said, well, maybe we ought it. No. Majority said no. And the more it changed this person and that person in this state and that state, then eventually more and more people said, yeah, it's not too bad. It's not hurting me. I'm not marrying. It's somebody else didn't marry it. It's theirs. Micro changes. And over time it changed. The same thing happened with the women's right to vote. It was like a little bit. That was long before y'all's time. It was before my time. So you want to get a little bit at a time. Now, there's a couple of different theories that we're going to talk about. One of them is called the social judgment theory. And it was done by somebody called Sharif and somebody else. And it basically says that you have a latitude of acceptance, a latitude of rejection, and a latitude of non-commitment. So let's say we're going to talk about broccoli. Yeah, I'll eat broccoli. No, I won't eat broccoli. Yeah, I'll eat broccoli, but it's got to be raw broccoli in my salad. I don't like cooked broccoli. That's the latitude of acceptance. Everything beyond that latitude of acceptance is either a latitude of non-commitment or a latitude of rejection. So let's say I said, well, broccoli with cheese sauce. No, that's rejection. I hate cheese sauce. I'm not going to have broccoli with cheese sauce. But let's say I said, well, what about steamed broccoli? Well, it's not that bad, and I could take it or leave it. That's the latitude of non-commitment. Your objective when you persuade somebody is to take their latitude of acceptance and move it closer to your target, or make it wider so it's more accepting. Reduce the the latitude of non-commitment and put it in the latitude of acceptance, and hopefully overcome it eventually, the latitude of rejection. Now the other one's called the Elaboration Likelihood Model, ELM. It was done by somebody named Petty and Cosipio. And it basically, it tries to persuade you in one of two ways. Either through central thought or the periphery. And my best example of this is when I go grocery shopping and my wife says pick up laundry soap. I go down the aisle, I pick up Gain, I put it in the buggy, and I go on. Why? Because that's what my wife likes. Why does she like it? I don't know. Maybe her mom liked it. But that's what she wants. That's in the periphery. I don't have to think about that. I buy this because of that. I have a Chevy truck. I like Chevy trucks. I like Chevrolet because my dad likes Chevrolet. So it's you know, it wasn't something I had to think hard about. Well, you know, is this one better than that one? Is this one tougher than that one? Does this get better gas mileage? I really didn't even look at the other ones. It was in my periphery. But when I went to buy the truck, then I used the central thought. I have this vehicle. I have a van. It gets so many miles a gallon. I don't have a payment on it. My insurance rates are lower. So I'm going to change that. Why? Because the van, I had to keep putting money in it. It had 240,000 miles on it. It was 12 years old. So what do I want? I want a truck. What kind of truck do I want? I want a Chevy truck. All right, but what else do I want? You know, there's probably 50 different Chevy trucks. Well, I want one with this much room. So, I mean, I got a couple of grandkids going to ride with us every now and then. I had a truck before. It was just a cab and a bench seat. I'd always fuss because I needed room to put my book bag, or, you know, if I had somebody else, two people riding with me, there was no room. So, okay, I want that. What kind of gas mileage do I want to get? Well, I could get a four-wheel drive, which gets lousy gas mileage, or I could get a two-wheel drive or a regular truck and get better gas mileage. Okay, well, am I going to need a four-wheel drive because I'm going down the mud? No, I'm not. So that was the thought process, the central process of how I decided on what I wanted. How much am I willing to pay? All those go into the getting persuaded to buy that truck. This truck met the requirements I had. They were able to meet my financial requirements, so I bought that truck. We can also look at problem, cause, solution. We've talked about it a little bit in informative speaking, but this is the problem, this is how you fix it, or this is what caused it, and this is how you fix it. So we need to worry about that if we are trying to persuade somebody. You know, some people may not see a problem of too many feral animals in the community until you explain to them why it's a problem. Explain to them why it happened. Too many people had pets that they didn't get spayed or neutered, and now the animals are running wild. And how can we fix it? People that have pets can pay an extra tax so we can get that fixed. Now, there's another guy called Monroe, and he has this neat thing called the Monroe's Motivation Sequence. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, this is the 5 steps. There are some more elaborate ones with more steps. I don't think that we need to go into those. And this is what the book talks about, so we're going to stick with the 5. If you're going to persuade somebody, the first thing you have to do is get their attention. We've talked about that before. You have to have an attention getter. You have to show them need for something. You have to show them a way to satisfy that need. You have to show them a way to visualize the success, and then ask them an ask. What action do you want them to take? So that covers chapter 13. Short, sweet, to the point. I've put the speaking notes on Cougar View already. Once again, I'd be happy to take your feedback on these videos. I need to know what I'm doing wrong so I can make it better for you. And maybe not for you, but you know, who knows how long this is going to go on. Maybe for your predecessors, the people that come after you. And so that's it. Good luck. I'm looking forward to your speeches. Please remember, all you have to do is email me if you have a question at Humphrey_Vernon@columbusState.edu, or do it on CougarView@colestate.edu, and I'll get it and I'll answer. Any other questions, you know how to get me. Have a great day. Stay safe. And I'm looking forward to seeing your videos. Bye-bye.